Peter Underwood. This is News from the Water.
Canal and River Trust faces 4-month-long investigation.
Government has ordered an investigation into how the Canal and River Trust has performed since it was set up by David Cameron in 2012 as a way of moving the cost of the British waterway system into the charity sector. The Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs is hiring private consultants for a 4-month investigation into what it calls the Canal and River Trust project. The consultants will look at how the Trust has fulfilled its obligations set out in the agreement, which has given it a substantial government grant every year since. It will also ask what public benefits the Trust has delivered and estimate the economic value of those benefits. The contractors are also going to be asked to establish a baseline and work out how CRT has moved from that baseline, which will be interesting as the Trust has embraced well-being in preference to being a navigation authority. However, just how effective the investigation will be is immediately thrown into doubt by the fee offered by DEFRA. It expects the 4-month-long project to be completed for, at most, £150,000. That's £1,250 a day, which is almost the daily fee of a single consultant from the likes of KPMG, Grant Thornton or one of the other big boys. So don't expect an investigation to spend much time talking to boaters, never mind liveaboard boaters. However, it may be crunch time for Richard Parry and his fellow directors who've gambled that repositioning CRT as a wellbeing charity will enable them to source a different pot of government money once the DEFRA grant for the waterways runs out in a year or two. The investigation will begin at the end of May and should be complete by the end of September.
Protest flotilla of boats on the River Lee as Canal and River Trust scrap 550 London mooring spaces.
The battle between London boaters and the CRT continues, with the Trust trying to squeeze liveaboard boaters out of the capital and organisations like the National Bargee Travellers Association fighting back with the only weapons available to them: publicity and legal challenges. The latest battleground is the River Lee, where boaters estimate that 550 mooring spaces will be lost by a CRT proposal to impose safety zones, where moorings banned along 10 kilometres of the river, allegedly to protect rowers. The response from boaters was a flotilla of boats, all protesting against what the NBTA describes as Canal and River Trust's absurd and falsely named new safety zones. The 13 boats from the flotilla came from all over London and beyond and included representatives from Broxbourne's own cruising club. And there was a towpath protest too, about 60 boaters and non-boaters who followed in their wake along the towpath. NBTA argues that the policy is profoundly ill-conceived, particularly in the context of a housing crisis and the pandemic. They also argue that removing moored boats will turn the towpaths into danger zones they once were prior to the growth of the boating population. And the association claims that 3/4 of rowing safety incidents occur between two rowers rather than between rowers and boaters. Now, the relationship between moored boats and rowing safety incidents is very weak, if there's any relationship at all, argues Ian McDowell, chair of the London branch of the NBTA.
The CRT has provided very limited data to justify this policy, and yet the impact on the boating community will be drastic. Many boats in London are homes. These planned safety zones will displace many boat dwellers from these areas.
London's liveaboard boaters believe that the safety zones policy is part of a larger attempt to drive them off the waterways. The justification offered for the introduction of the safety zones is to keep rowers safe. The CRT has not provided boaters with any evidence, however, that rowers are placed at risk by powered boats moving at 3 miles an hour. It's claimed that moored boats narrowing the canal pose a danger to rowers, but there is no point in the canal where rowers do not have substantial clearance in the event that a boat passes. And the CRT originally marketed this policy as a water sports strategy before rebranding it as safety. Boaters say that in an attempt to placate rowing clubs frustrated at having to share the water space, the Trust has transformed a simple water management issue into a catastrophic policy. And since the policy is incoherent, boaters are led to question whether a general push to cull the boating community is its driving force and whether safety is just a fig leaf for ugly bias. The MBTA says boaters want to develop real solutions rather than the offerings from the Canal and River Trust, and they're developing a proposal that addresses the concerns of rowers while keeping homes and families on the water. The Canal and River Trust response to the protests has been to stage a Zoom meeting defending its decisions. It denies the MBTA claim that 550 mooring spaces will be lost, but fails to spell out exactly how many will go. Instead it says,
although there will be some restrictions on where boats can moor to ensure that a safe navigation width is maintained, there will still be lots of mooring space.
It claims liveaboard and leisure boaters are welcome to use and moor in the water safety zone, and claims
much of the space designated as no mooring is already space where boats should not moor. For example, in bridge holes, on sharp bends, or where it is inaccessible for boats to moor due to shallow depth or vegetation. Despite that, it admits there will be 1,360 metres of no mooring space in Broxbourne, 3,324 metres on the lower Lee, that's nearly 5 kilometres in total, or the equivalent of 275 spaces for 17-metre boats. The basis for CRT claims seems to be that there were just 10 incidents a year of safety incidents between powered and unpowered craft on these sections, and claims inappropriately moored boats, and the lack of safe passing space or access to the bank, are often a contributing factor.
Canal Trust gets approval for restoration after a deal with HS2.
Chesterfield Canal Trust has finally had planning approval to restore 2.5 kilometres of the canal within Chesterfield Borough. It follows weeks of negotiations with the HS2 consortium, who originally objected to the Society's plans. The Society has now come to an agreement which would give room for both the canal and the HS2 line to its proposed infrastructure maintenance depot. The Society says it'll be a while before you see any big yellow machines on the ground, but say that a very big hurdle has been crossed. Well, congratulations.